Hello, I'm Eric Bosman with Kimley Horn, and thank you for taking time to view this video regarding the North Druid Hills Livable Centers Initiative Briarcliff Node Update. The North Druid Hills Livable Centers Initiative is a transportation and land use master plan that was developed by DeKalb County and the surrounding community in 2009. However, in the last 12 years, a significant number of changes have occurred along the North Druid Hills corridor, particularly in the areas closest to I-85 and Briarcliff Road. So based on recent developments that have occurred in the area, proposed developments, and recent annexation by the city of Brookhaven in areas along the North Druid Hills corridor, a group of area stakeholders began to gather in late 2020 and early 2021 to look at ways in order to modify and update the plan, particularly in the area of Briarcliff Road and the intersection of Briarcliff Road and North Druid Hills to create some updated ideas and standards for the area. The original 2009 master plan for the North Druid Hills corridor looked at the area all the way west to Buford Highway and I-85 and east to Toco Hills, Claremont Road, and the Mason Mill area east of Claremont Road. Now, this particular update only pertains to the Briarcliff node area, the area encircled in blue on the slide and highlighted in red, which was one of the original sub-districts in the 2009 plan. And clearly one of the questions to be asked is why would we only focus on the Briarcliff node in the short term? And I'll detail that over these next couple of slides. The Briarcliff node, as delineated in 2009, included only the area just north and just south of North Druid Hills Road on the east side of Briarcliff. So that includes a series of apartment complexes, the DeKalb County school site, including Adams Stadium, and a series of retailers on the north side of North Druid Hills Road from the Chick-fil-A over to the Target. Part of the intention of the Briarcliff node in the 2009 plan was to serve as a transition area between higher intensity development to the west of Briarcliff Road and near I-85 and single family neighborhoods that are farther east in North Druid Hills. However, over the last several months, the city of Brookhaven has now annexed much of the property that was in the Briarcliff node. Those properties that are encircled here in the red dashed line, including the Boston Market and the QT gas station on the south side of North Druid Hills Road, and most of the retail properties on the north side of North Druid Hills Road. So what's left of the Briarcliff node today really is not much of a transition, as the very core of the district is now part of the city of Brookhaven and under the guise of that city's zoning regulations. So one of the primary objectives of this master plan update is to reorganize the Briarcliff node in a way that it can still continue to serve as a transition area in unincorporated DeKalb County between higher intensity development, most of which is now within the city of Brookhaven, where building heights of 10 stories are being allowed, and higher intensity multifamily development, and that transition to the single family areas to the east. So what's being recommended in this plan update is to reorganize that Briarcliff node and include properties farther to the south that include Kittredge Park and other multifamily development, as well as a few additional properties to the north of North Druid Hills Road, including the collection of churches just east of Mount Moriah Road and a few of the residential areas that are north of Briarcliff Road that are all sort of encircled by multifamily residential today. The goal of reorganizing this node again is to establish a reasonable transition area between commercial, higher intensity development west of Briarcliff Road and now right at the intersection of Briarcliff Road and North Druid Hills, and our stable single family neighborhoods to the north, to the east, and to the south. And this idea of reorganizing and resetting that transition is really apparent when you look at the amount of development that has recently been approved. within the North Druid Hills corridor area, particularly between I-85 and just east of Briarcliff Road. The slide shows a number of recently approved developments, including the Children's Healthcare of Atlanta campus, the Emory at Executive Park redevelopment, Druid Hills Manor, which is a new multifamily development with parking structure just to the west of the target. We expect the target site will undergo some additional development or redevelopment in the coming years. And the Blue Star recognizes a recent development for an extra space storage facility that is now under construction. The parcels that are identified in blue are really those that, when you look at the area from a market perspective, are pretty ripe for redevelopment activity, including some of the underutilized parcels around the churches, the former high school site just east of Adams Stadium that is still owned by the DeKalb County School District, and some of the lower intensity, older multifamily development south of North Druid Hills along the east side of Briarcliff Road. So the reason for this plan update really is to think a little more forward about these areas that are likely to redevelop over the coming years and reset some community expectations in a way that preserves and maintains an appropriate transition that protects the single family neighborhoods to the north, east, and south, but also creates opportunities that are viable from a market perspective that might prevent or at least encourage some of these properties to reconsider not being annexed into the city of Brookhaven, but remaining in unincorporated DeKalb County. So when we look at sort of this recommended reordering of the Briarcliff node, it does include multifamily over to the southwest corner shown in orange, as well as on the north end of Briarcliff. It includes Kittredge Park, not because we want to do anything with Kittredge Park, but it's such an important community asset that we believe it deserves to be tied into the surrounding neighborhoods and the surrounding area so that it is more accessible and usable to the public. See properties that are codified in light blue that are institutional properties owned again by the DeKalb County School District and by a series of churches, some of which have relocated from this site to other locations in the metro area. And then a series of residential properties to the north, most of which are newly developed townhomes, again, to sort of reset and reestablish that transition between commercial development west of Briarcliff Road and around the target, and separate that from single family development to the east. Now, in the current DeKalb County Comprehensive Plan, this area, the Briarcliff node, is identified as a neighborhood center. So throughout the area that is the neighborhood center today, development can be 1 to 3 stories in height and up to 24 units per acre for multifamily development. In working with the stakeholder group that is comprised of neighborhood residents and leaders from the surrounding area, we've really felt like the appropriate path forward is not to codify this as one single activity center, but to have a series of sub areas within it that seek to tailor the needs and the regulations to each specific area within the Briarcliff node. So to do that, we're recommending a series of 5 sub areas. The first is the red burgundy area shown in the southwest corner that today is a collection of multifamily apartments. There's a creek that runs right through the middle of that property that's shown in sort of a light green color on the slide. We think what makes sense in the future is that that multifamily at some point in time will likely become viable as a redevelopment site. What's important is that north of that creek and sort of north of Sheridan Road, it probably makes sense that it would not only be multifamily residential, but also include a commercial or an office component. But the stakeholder group has felt strongly that what we don't want to see there is a retail shopping center or a big box strip center. So what we're recommending is a series of standards and regulations that would make it primarily multifamily to the north, but with integrated office or commercial in a mixed use format, and then preserving the area south of the creek to still only be residential development to provide that transition to neighborhoods to the south. While it's not shown here on this particular map, we also think it makes a great deal of sense for the county to work on these properties as they redevelop to provide a roadway connection from the intersection of Sheridan Road and Briarcliff Node through this redevelopment area and north of the creek over to the school site or to Adams Stadium to provide a local roadway and potentially a local trail connection that provides a way for local residents and stakeholders to bypass the Briarcliff Road at North Druid Hills intersection and be able to access the south end of Briarcliff Road and the east end of North Druid Hills without having to go through that intersection. As we move to the east, the plan update outlines a second area that's referred to as the institutional and open space area. Now, this includes Kittredge Park, the pool area that is DeKalb County Parks and Recreation, as well as the Kittredge Magnet School currently and Adams Stadium. Now, the stakeholder group really sees this as an opportunity to preserve and enhance institutional uses and access to open space within the surrounding area. And as I mentioned on the previous area, the residential mixed use, looking for ways to provide trail connectivity and roadway connectivity through the site, but preserving it as an institutional and open space anchor within the district. So we look at the next sub area, we'd be remiss if we didn't recognize that the prior school site is a potential redevelopment site. And we know that there's a lot of history with previous developments that have been proposed in the area and concern that those developments were out of scale and out of character for the surrounding neighborhoods. So in working with the DeKalb County School District and stakeholders in the area, this area is being listed as a mixed use area, but a mix of residential, commercial, and office with recommendations and standards to push any higher density in the future towards the west end of that mixed use parcel, closer to the stadium and Briarcliff Road, and then transitioning down as it moves east, closer to the single family neighborhoods. To encourage and enhance an appropriate transition and buffer to the single family area, we do recommend with that green line that a multi-use trail, a greenway trail, be considered on the far east end of that mixed use site in order to make sure that that buffer is preserved between single family homes to the east and the mixed use site to the west. As we move to the north side of North Druid Hills Road, the next sub area is shown as a residential neighborhood commercial transition between proposed higher intensity development that is already permitted west of the target site to the single family neighborhoods to the east. So this residential neighborhood commercial transition area would potentially include multifamily development with small scale retail integrated on the ground floor facing North Druid Hills Road, and then potentially stepping down to attached single family as it gets closer to the neighborhoods that are there today. Again, it's very important to maintain appropriate transitions and buffers. And so once again, we're using the idea of a greenway trail to separate multifamily development on the west to single family development in the east, tying that back into Kittredge Park, and then potentially adding a connection to the north over to the Peachtree Creek Greenway. And then the final sub area is the residential sub area on the north end of this Briarcliff node and on either side of Briarcliff Road. Now, the area is residential today, and really the reason to codify it as residential in the future is to make sure that we're preserving that transition, whether it's the existing townhomes and single family, or whether it's some appropriately scaled redevelopment of some of the aging homes in the area over the years to come. Again, it's important to tie in that greenway idea to create walkability throughout the district and tie Kittredge Park up and around to the Peachtree Creek Greenway. The draft plan document, which will be published on the website, goes into much greater detail about each one of these sub areas and the vision and the standards that need to be established for each. But this table starts to show some of the zoning recommendations that go along with the text that's in the plan. And essentially what's being proposed is allowing some of these sub areas to move up one step in terms of the proposed density and height so that the properties can be economically viable and marketable, but hopefully still remain within unincorporated DeKalb County. And while it does allow that one more step in terms of density and height, the return for that are the details that are in the plan related to limiting some of the uses, preserving and enhancing buffers between potential new development and existing single-family neighborhoods, in considering and incorporating new roadway connections as part of that redevelopment, and really encouraging and trying to implement this greenway and multi-use trail that starts to tie the area together, provide access to Kittredge Park, and create an alternative for local stakeholders and residents to getting in their car for every trip that they need to make or for recreation within the district. And the other benefit of updating this plan is taking a fresh look at and reinforcing some of the transportation projects that were in the original plan. One of the most difficult circumstances within this area is the Briarcliff Road at North Druid Hills intersection. That's really the cog in the wheel that limits transportation access and connectivity through the area. So the plan update reinforces some of the recommendations and roadway connections that were in the original 2009 master plan, including ways to connect the east side of North Druid Hills Road to the north side of Briarcliff or the south side of Briarcliff without having to go through the North Druid Hills at Briarcliff intersection. But this also lays out the plan for the Greenway Trail and for several other key roadway connections that could enhance accessibility and connectivity in the area while easing congestion over the long term. As we mentioned earlier in this video, the purpose of this LCI update is focused solely on the Briarcliff node. And we have to acknowledge and recognize that a great deal of time and effort went into creating the master plan in 2009, which goes all the way from Buford Highway and I-85 over to Toco Hills and Claremont Road. And there are those in the community that still would like to see the entire LCI plan updated and brought into the modern day. But the reason for this focus on the Briarcliff node is very much because of the recent development, the redevelopment proposals, and recent annexation, which is changing the very fabric of the intersection of North Druid Hills Road and Briarcliff Road, and the need to reestablish this transition area before the next wave of development, and to partner with the DeKalb County School District while they're at the table and thinking about the future of the school district site in the old high school. So we've put together this draft document again with the help of area residents, neighborhood leaders, stakeholders to create this short-term plan update for the Briarcliff node. We've held a number of stakeholder meetings. We appeared before the District 2 Community Council in early February, and we will be publishing the draft document on the website and hosting a public meeting on Tuesday evening, February 23rd, to present the plan and to answer questions from the community. The following week, we expect to go to the DeKalb County Planning Commission for their review of the plan recommendations, and then potentially to the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners in March of 2021. At the same time, we're continuing to collaborate this effort with the DeKalb County Comprehensive Plan update that is currently underway. And while we are laying out land use and transportation recommendations, those recommendations will then be used as part of an upcoming North Druid Hills corridor study for which DeKalb County has received funding to look at some of the bigger transportation issues, projects, and opportunities along the corridor. So this short-term plan update, again, is a way to sort of reestablish the vision and to work with some of the existing challenges and constraints specifically that are being experienced in this node. But it's also laying a foundation and a framework that will be incorporated into the county's comprehensive plan, can be a model for a future update to the entire LCI plan and the larger extent of the North Druid Hills corridor, and providing a set of recommendations that will incorporate it into and serve as a foundation for the upcoming transportation study for the North Druid Hills corridor study. Thank you for taking a little bit of time to get up to speed on this plan update. We hope that you will provide input via the website or join us for the public meeting on Tuesday, February 23rd. And of course, please know that you can also provide input at upcoming meetings with the DeKalb County Planning Commission and before the Board of Commissioners.